Hello, dreamers, and welcome back to the Bringin It Home show right here on MC22. I'm social media coordinator Tucker LaBelle alongside Director of Operations Roman Weinberg. Excited to bring you guys another installation of the Bringin It Home show. Today we have Dubuque area native and baseball fan, baseball lover, and host of the Dubuque Area Baseball Podcast, Nick Manaman. Without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into our episode with Nick.
Dreamers, we are joined this episode of the Bringin It Home show by Nick Manaman, who is the host of the Dubuque Area Baseball Podcast, former player, former coach, and a Dubuque native, proud to be, and a proud Iowan and baseball lover out there. Nick, thanks for joining the show today.
Roman and Tucker, thanks for having me. I do have to tell you, I have some pre-show jitters. I am following former Oakland A Johnny Gomes and Oakland A personality, owner of A Perfect Game, Dallas Braden. So thank you for having me on the show. I listen and watch regularly, so I appreciate it.
Hey, you're welcome. And followers of the Dubuque Area Baseball Podcast know that you're an Oakland A's fan, and so that's pretty cool. Hey, you never know. Maybe you'll just meet him. Maybe I can make that happen. We'll see.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. So to start, for those that don't know the story about Nick Manaman, you played high school ball, right, as thousands of different kids across the country, 96 to 2000, Hempstead High School. You returned back to coach for your alma mater and two other schools locally, high school baseball. How did you get into coaching after your high school days, and what made you decide to want to be a coach?
The thing that I loved about my time at Hempstead from 96 to 2000 is I actually got to be part of Coach Dick Core's last season, Hall of Fame Coach Dick Core in 1999, and we were able to get him to the state tournament in his final season. They say those who can no longer do, teach. And I could no longer play baseball at a young age. Some would argue that I could not play baseball even when I was on the Hempstead roster, but I cracked that starting lineup. But I wanted to get into coaching because I just love everything about the game of baseball, love teaching the game of baseball, love working with the kids. And I did that for 17 or 18 years. And it was a great run. I got to spend 11 years at my alma mater. I got to spend some time at Wahlert Catholic High School with Hall of Fame coach Jerry Rowling and current coach Corey Tischer, and got to coach some great kids there, Super Bowl champion Riley McCarron being one of them. And then I finished my coaching career at Western Dubuque, where I got to connect with a former teacher of mine, Casey Bryant, who I really look up to. And we had a great run there, had some great baseball players, had some great multi-sport athletes, and got to work a little bit with Calvin Harris, who is now in the SEC at Ole Miss. That's a wrap up of my coaching career in a short tidbit there. Why I decided to step away from coaching is I'm also a teacher, and the baseball season goes on in Iowa during the summer. And during those years when you have a great run where you make it to the state tournament, in 2014 at Hempstead, we made it to the state semifinals. And when we got back from state, I had 4 days of summer vacation. And teachers, people do not realize this. Yes, we do get a lot of time off. We do get a lot of our holidays off, but we get 2 days a year off for personal use. So there were so many things that I wanted to do outside of coaching that I haven't had a chance to experience. One of them being the College World Series, or trying to catch all of the Major League Baseball stadiums around the United States and in Canada. And with 2 days off a year and making those long runs, coaching what you always hope for, there were other things in life that I've never had an opportunity to do that I wanted to do. I'd coached my whole life since I graduated high school, and I wanted to see what life was like outside of coaching. I also do have a wife who enjoys spending time with me. I have a 10-month-old son and a 12-year-old daughter. And it got to be harder to get on that bus and to be gone for a day. And it got to be harder to go to batting practice at noon, catch a 2-hour bus ride, go play a doubleheader, take a 2-hour bus ride home, get home at midnight, and then do the same thing all over again. And the older that I got, the more I realized I missed my family. And for so many years, players have gotten the best of me, and I wanted my family to get the best of me, because there were times and there were summers where my family did not get the best of me. And I wanted to make sure that my son, who's a lot younger than my daughter, didn't miss out on certain experiences that she did because I was coaching or I was on the road for quite some time.
That's amazing. And it kind of brings back the whole moral of the story of the Field of Dreams movie as well, family and that connection, father, sons, but just in general as well, that family connection.
For sure.
So, tell us about, you're the host of the Dubuque Area Baseball Podcast. How did that come to be? How long has it been in fruition now?
The podcast started in February of 2020. And how it started to be is one of my best friends, we used to be enemies on the baseball field. Funny story how we became to be good friends is him and I got into it on the baseball field while I was at Hempstead. And he was at senior, and a year later, we both approached each other, having not spoken, and apologized to each other. And we've been inseparable ever since. His name is Tyler Sogling, and he's now a baseball coach in Arizona. I hope he comes back to Dubuque shortly. But him and I, we had those misconnections where we weren't talking as much as we would have liked. And we said, you know what, let's talk about Dubuque baseball. You have a passion for Dubuque baseball, playing semi-pro and coaching at senior, now being out of the area. And I had just left coaching. And I wanted to have a way to keep those connections. Coach Rapp from Hempstead, Coach Tischer from Waller, Coach Casey Bryant from Western Dubuque. During the baseball season, I would talk to those guys more than I would talk to my wife. We were constantly on the phone. We were constantly texting. I didn't want to lose those connections. So what do you do when you get out of coaching? You still want to talk to players and umpires. The big thing to do was to start a podcast. And it was something where we did one episode. We were unsure if anybody would listen to it. We put it out. The first episode is terrible. It was really long. We did not know how to edit. We did not know when to shut up. We did not know when to stop talking about other things. And sure enough, we had about 500 people listen to it. 400 and some people listened to it within the first couple of weeks it was out. So we knew we had something on our hands. And then we went back to the well. We shortened it up. We brought in some guests. We learned how to edit, and we talked about those good feel-good stories. We covered teams. We covered semi-pros. We've covered the young guys. We've covered the old guys. And then the pandemic hit. And I was a school teacher that was told I could not go into school because the pandemic had shut everything down. So we just stuck with the podcast, and it worked, and people are still calling for it. People are still listening. People are still reaching out to be guests. And I'm still nervous about asking people to come on to this show because I hate the fear of rejection. And I know that everybody's time is valuable, but we've had some great episodes. We've had some emotionally charging episodes with Dylan Slattery, who's a multiple time cancer survivor, played for Coach Jink and coached for Coach Jink. We've had some episodes about the local academies. We've had some great episodes with Calvin Harris, Riley McCarron. The semi-pro guys love it, and they're a huge supporter of the podcast. It's going to be great to see what we have coming up in the future. Coach Tom Witchery, who is the guy who got the Miracle League going and Miracle Park going, and former Hempstead High School coach. And then Pat Yipe Weber, who everybody knows and is infamous around the area, will be coming on as well. So Started as a way to keep a connection and a conversation going, turned into a pandemic hobby. And I don't think I can pull away or step out of the batter's box now because it's been so successful, and it's been great, chatting with you, Roman. You and I would not be talking if it wasn't for this podcast. I wouldn't have had an opportunity to connect with Colin Ray or Eric Munson if it wouldn't have been for the podcast. And it's been an unbelievable experience, and I've enjoyed it so far.
That's great. Yeah. And, Tucker and I, same thing. I mean, we started this Bringing It Home show a year and a half ago, and it's come full circle for us. We're really enjoying it, and being able to reach out to you guys and advocates of the game of baseball from all over the country, from the National Baseball Hall of Fame to the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum, to the Shoeless Joe Jackson Museum, to Dallas Braden and Johnny Gomes. It runs the gamut, and we enjoy it too. So that's great. And you've turned into the local beat writer, kind of for Dubuque area baseball. That's got to be pretty cool.
Wish I do have to give the Telegraph Herald their props, because a lot of the articles that I share come from them. And there are some guests that will regularly talk to the Telegraph Herald that will not talk to me, that I would love to have an interview with them. But it's been a one-stop shop on social media, Facebook and Instagram, Dubuque Area Baseball Podcast, at Coach Manaman on Twitter. If you just want to follow Dubuque baseball content, if you want to know how Tommy Speck, draft prospect from Wallert's doing, or how Ian Moeller's doing, who just recently got drafted from the Texas Rangers, you can find all of that stuff on our social media. We share it regularly, and it keeps people involved. And I really appreciate what the TH does. And the TH has shared with me that I'm not sure if I should share this on record, but I'm sure they won't mind because they have so many more subscribers than I do. But they also like that, the podcast where you can listen to it while you drive to work. And we have the same audience, but that the podcast provides something a little bit more different, where you can't read the newspaper while you're sitting at your desk working, but you can listen to the Dubuque Area Baseball Podcast while you're doing paperwork. And that was a great piece of feedback and comment that I got from Jim from the TH.
That's great. Great. Yeah, you can't really read a newspaper while you're driving. Don't recommend.
Unless you have a Tesla that drives itself, right?
Yeah, apparently, right?
Yeah.
The 21st century. What a world.
Yeah.
Now, Nick, myself being somebody not original to this area, I have recently heard of, the amazing success of not only Hempstead's baseball program, but Western Dubuque softball program. And for an outsider to hear about that success really speaks to how incredible both those programs have been of recent. And, your connection to both Western Dubuque and to Hempstead, what is it like to see those programs, both baseball and softball, have the success they're having lately?
It's interesting because when you're growing up and you're little, you root for wherever you go to school. So you always root it for Hempstead. And then you want Wallert to lose. You want Western Dubuque to lose. You want Dyersville to lose because you don't want them to take the spotlight. The older you get and the more connections you have, you want everybody to do well. We had East Dubuque on across the river. They won a conference championship for the first time in 16 years. Ecstatic for those guys. Southwestern, losing record across the river. They come on the podcast and they make it to the state tournament, went on an unbelievable run. Western Dubuque made it to state either 2 or 3 years in a row. Hempstead, the past couple of years, has been ranked regularly in the top 10. And then Wallert had a run there for 3 seasons where they went to the state tournament as well. And then you have the smaller schools, your Dyersville, which is always good, and your Cascade, which is always good. But to have a state championship come through with Western Dubuque softball, you always want your community to be viewed in a positive light. And I just look at what happened with the Field of Dreams and what happened with that Field of Dreams game. When I travel, I always tell people I live 20 minutes from the Field of Dreams. I would say that prior to the Field of Dreams game, and 50-50 people would know what I was talking to. In the past month, I have been to Chicago 3 times. I've been in Atlanta, Georgia as well. I was actually in Atlanta, Georgia during the Field of Dreams game, watching the Cincinnati Reds hammer the Atlanta Braves. The game was over by the 3rd inning. And I was struggling with FOMO that all of this was going on in the area. And that week and that night I was in Atlanta, Georgia, but it was a trip that had been planned and canceled and planned and canceled so many times that we just couldn't back out. But now in that past month, traveling, Nick, where are you from? You know, Field of Dreams, I'm 20 minutes from there. And everybody always comments, oh yeah, where the White Sox and the Yankees played, or where Tim Anderson hit that walk-off home run. And in the past month, 100% of the people, when they ask where I'm from, and I say I'm from Dubuque, right outside of the Field of Dreams, every single person has known what I've been talking about. So anytime a state championship comes, anytime there's professional players playing a celebrity softball game out at the Field of Dreams, anytime Waller High School wins a state volleyball championship, it's always great just to have our community in such a good spotlight, because I think people look past Iowa and people have looked past Dubuque for a long time for maybe not having as much talent as we do around the country. But you look at what Colin Ray's doing. You look at Ian Moeller being drafted. You look at Calvin Harris, who turned down an opportunity to be drafted. You look at Ian Moeller, you look at Solon Munson coming through. So there's going to be some pro prospects coming through. And when you see on the TV from Dubuque, Iowa, it kind of gives you tingles because you're proud of where you come from.
So true. So true. And, you know, you had kind of answered my next question in terms of, you know, people in the area sometimes take for granted, you know, the Field of Dreams, having it right there, like any tourist attraction around the country, right? Living just outside of Vegas. You know, people kind of get perturbed and bugged by Vegas, or New Yorkers, you know, people in the suburbs don't try and avoid the big city as much as possible. But, you know, for you, have you ever found yourself taking for granted the Field of Dreams, or have you always had this profound respect for the site? And, you know, have you always had that kind of be like a bragging right? Hey, I'm from Iowa, the Field of Dreams.
It's definitely a bragging right now. And as long as it's in the national spotlight. I'm a late bloomer to the Field of Dreams. So I don't remember watching it as a kid. My dad was my team's biggest baseball fan and my biggest baseball fan, but he necessarily wasn't a baseball fan. First time I saw Field of Dreams, it was in my 7th grade science class, Mr. Patton at Jones Junior High, which is now the alternative high school in Dubuque. And the only reason why we watched it is because he was an extra in it. He was in it for 2 seconds, walking on Main Street, right by the town clock with his head turned. And that was in middle school. And being a baseball fan, I really wasn't a fan of the movie. You had Rookie of the Year, you had The Sandlot, you had a Little Big League. And those were more of those types of movies for middle schoolers. And I think I really missed the message. And then Chad Crable and I had him a guest. We were talking about the Hempstead All-Decade team. And he ended the episode with a quote from Moonlight Graham. And he was talking about how great the movie was. And I went back and I gave it another viewing, and I left blown away. I didn't know how much I did not comprehend it as a child. And now, probably since him and I had that conversation over a year ago, I've probably watched it 7 or 8 times. My friends would go out there regularly in high school because we were baseball players, and we could go out there and we could take BP and nobody would kick us off the field. And now I've had a lot of friends travel to the area. I've had people come in from Arizona. I've shown them. I had friends come up from New York City for the game. Mets fans, but they came for that game, and I had an opportunity to show them the area and show them the field. There was a time where in a week span I was out there about 6 times, and I don't think I will take it for granted, just because of the message that the movie portrays, and that father and son relationship. And watching it now and seeing my dad become older, and I'll be 40 here shortly. I still look at my dad as he's in his 40s, but he's in his 70s, and his health has gone downhill in the past 35 years. And just now having that special connection of not wanting to let go of that relationship, or having that relationship end to his passing, which we will all do at some point.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, to have, and I think that's the beauty of the movie and why it transcends time, because of the meaning and how it can change for any given individual at any time, because life changes. And hearing people's reactions in terms of the response, the reaction to watching the movie originally the first time, and how their perspective has changed because of life. I think that's why the Field of Dreams is so prevalent still, is because it is so relatable to real life. Things happen, and the more that you go through life, the more you relate to the movie.
Exactly. And with the national spotlight being on it, and Good Morning America and ESPN, the baseball network, and then of course with the game being put in the national spotlight, I think it opened the movie up to a different generation of kids. And now you'll have those kids who just recently were there with their dad, bringing their children there. And the movie has such a strong message. And just like you had mentioned, Roman and Tucker, that you can comprehend the movie in many different ways. You can have 5 or 6 different people sit down and watch the movie, and have 5 or 6 different views, and have 5 or 6 different emotions that they take away from there.
Well said.
Thanks.
So, I mean, you've talked a lot about it already, about the important life lessons to take away, from the movie. And it's interesting for you to be, from the area, and almost have a reawakening to the movie so recently, but such a profound awakening. But for all those friends, visiting the field, and all those people that you'll continue to show the field with extreme pride, what is the one lesson, if you could give them one simple lesson from the movie? What is the most important lesson for them to take away while visiting, while watching it, while just being in the ambiance of the Field of Dreams?
Baseball is a great sport for bringing people together, and you learn many life lessons. The best hitters fail 7 out of 10 times. And the message that I try to pass on to people, especially right now, it seems like we're just so divided across the board, and you take things for granted. And I think the message that I would like people to take away from the Field of Dreams is those relationships, those connections that you may have lost, or that friend that you may have had a disagreement with, is we're not always going to be around forever, and life is too short. So to take those lessons that you learn from the Field of Dreams, like Ray had with his father, and not let that time go by where you have that misconnection, and you look back at things and wish that you would have had more time to make memories with those people. I know there's been times where I've had to put my tail between my legs, admit that I was wrong, apologize, but not only apologize for what I did, but show the people that I was apologizing to that I'm not going to make this mistake again. I learned from my mistakes. And I think that scene at the end where they have that catch, you can see all of the emotions from Kevin Costner, and what could have been, and what should have been if they would have not lost that connection, or they would have not had that disagreement. And he goes all over the country trying to find this message that takes him ultimately to finding his dad. And while your dad or your wife or your friends are here, we don't need to go on that journey. We have them here. And if you've gotten off that path of that journey, to reconnect or to connect with them, and know that we're not always going to agree. And it's okay to agree to disagree, but remember why you became friends in the first place. And I know there are some friends that I have where there are certain topics we can't talk about because it might lead to an uncomfortable disagreement, and that's okay. But it is also okay to have those conversations. But ultimately, we became friends. We made a connection, and remembering what that connection is, and not losing that lost connection. That would be my message that I take from the Field of Dreams. That's messages that I know after I had watched it again recently, that I reached out to some people, some high school friends that I hadn't talked to in a couple of years, and reconnected with them, and they ended up coming to my wedding, which was amazing to be able to connect with them again. And it was almost like we didn't miss a beat, that we were just like we were in high school, and it hadn't been 7 or 8 years since we had spoke.
That's outstanding. Great answer. Perfect ending to the interview. Dreamers, Nick Manaman, again, host of the Dubuque Area Baseball Podcast. Nick, just a reminder as we say goodbye here, say our farewells, let our audience know, and the viewers here on MC22 know where to find the Dubuque Area Baseball Podcast.
Instagram and Facebook at Dubuque Area Baseball Podcast, and you can find me on Twitter at Coach Manaman. And Mediacom, I tweet you guys every now and then. You guys do high school baseball games. You need to add me as a color commentator. So when Hempstead and Wahlert are playing, you got to reach out, and you got to have everybody's favorite coach on the mic.
That's it. Nick, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, guys. Keep up the great work.